Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of February 2nd through the 8th of 2026. All right, so this week we have, first of all, we're coming off of a full moon. We did just have a full moon last Sunday. So full moons are the time of getting a greater perspective on our life and usually getting some insights and some things that perhaps we want to implement for the remainder of the lunar cycle, so the next 2 weeks. So that's early in the week. We're still having that full moon energy, still getting that new perspective. But as the week unfolds, it's a great time to really apply and really implement these perspectives, especially by the weekend once we do enter into that third quarter moon. Now, the big player this week is Uranus. So we have Uranus going direct on Tuesday, and both Venus and Mercury squaring up to Uranus throughout the week. So Uranus is the planet of what we could say is one of the planets of connecting to our true self, our higher self, the other one being Neptune. But Uranus is more of the yang side of that, which is more of the active applying side of that. And this would be perhaps the ideas of listening to your excitement. We could say that there's two philosophies on life: listen to your excitement and listen to your soul. Neptune would be more of the soul, but Uranus is listen to that excitement. So there could be some things moving forward here that we can apply in our life throughout the week. Maybe it feels a little more liberating. Maybe it just feels more freeing. It just feels like having a little bit more of that true self in our life. But the squares do make it challenging on Thursday with Mercury, maybe with communication, maybe with that day-to-day routine, maybe some things coming out of left field that we have to adapt with. So with the squares, really being intentional with themes around freedom and change, listening to that true self, but applying it intentionally. And then on Sunday, we'll be with Venus, and that could be maybe dealing with relationships or maybe with some of our enjoyments and values of life. So a little more flexibility there. But this is as those planets are going into Aquarius. We have Mercury and Venus going into Aquarius this week. So this is really for the coming weeks, having a little bit more of this sense of vision, of forward thinking, maybe even connecting to things greater than ourselves. A good time of the year for seeing the world, the future, maybe connecting with our network circles, community, friends, things that are very forward thinking and contributive like that. All right, so let's go and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here's the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, February 2nd. And as you can see here, we are using the actual size of the constellations. You'll notice that the Zodiac here is uneven sizes. We have Aries that's very small, Pisces that's very large, for example. This is using the actual sizes and where everything is astronomically or visibly in the sky. And this is very different from mainstream astrology. For example, you'll hear that right now, most of these fast movers, in fact, I think all of them, you'll hear that they're in Aquarius at the moment. But if you do look up at the actual sky, you will see these planets in Capricorn, a completely different sign. So do check out the link down below if you are new to this channel and not familiar with this form of astrology, which we call true sidereal astrology. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to do just a quick recap here. Not much to say. We've got all the fast movers in Capricorn. These recent weeks has been focusing more in terms of perhaps putting in more responsibility into our life, maybe working within some of the limitations of our life, developing characteristics such as perseverance, discipline, responsibility, maturity, groundedness, a long-term view. Capricorn, the sea goat, is all about climbing that mountain, and anything that does require that one step at a time is what the energy is all about. And it's a great time to really be long-term like that at the moment. So that's where all the fast movers are. We did just have that full moon yesterday on Sunday in Cancer. That's the halfway point of the lunar cycle, a time of getting a status check, a greater awareness of things that, again, we can be applying this week. But starting the week here, the major emphasis is going to be on the moon and perhaps some of these minor aspects up to Chiron, possibly, but definitely the lunar placement. And in this regard, it's actually quite straightforward. The moon will be in Leo all the way through Wednesday. Okay, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the moon in Leo. This is a good first few days here for self-expression. Leo the lion is all about connecting to our hearts and connecting to the things and people that we're proud of in life, we want to spend more time with, that we love. And again, it could be even just personal, hobbies, interests, creative self-expression, just having a little bit more of that fun, playful, and expressive energy in our life is a really good way of working with these first few days. And that's going to help us really apply those new perspectives from the full moon there. So the strongest thing early in the week in terms of the planetary shifts wouldn't normally be Uranus, because Uranus is a very slow moving planet. But since Uranus is very active in the sky at the moment, squaring up to Mercury and Venus this week, I think this station direct might be noticeable for most of us. So this is Uranus going direct. This happens every year. Uranus has been retrograde for almost the past 6 months. And so it has been, as it is, every year, this past 6 months, reflecting and more internal with the true self stuff. Yeah, it puts a little bit of a pause on implementing more freedom, implementing more change, implementing more of that excitement that we were talking about earlier there. And now once Uranus starts to go direct, it starts to make it more visible. It starts to move it forward, and it's a good time to start to apply that energy for the next 6 months. So again, perhaps a shift, maybe around Tuesday, around what gives us that sense of freedom, what gives us that sense of excitement in our life. And for some of us who have a very strong Uranus in our chart, or Aquarius in our chart, or perhaps in transit, maybe this is over your ascendant or something, the station direct will be particularly noticeable in the sense that you may actually have something around Tuesday that starts to move forward for you, yeah? But I think for all of us collectively, it's good to just see around Tuesday, how can we start to apply this energy? More excitement, more of our true self, more innovative, and we'll see a lot of this unfolding more and more as, again, Mercury and Venus, followed by the other fast movers around the corner, enter into Aquarius. Aquarius is a very similar energy to that Uranus there. So Tuesday, things shifting, maybe more in regards to the true self, our excitement, and applying that for the upcoming many months, 6 months for this year. Now, as you can see, we do have some minor sextiles with Chiron, nothing major, but for those of you who are on the healing journey, at least personally at the moment, this could be some good opportunities this week, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual healing. We do have some sextiles between Mercury and Venus up to Chiron, the healer, and so there could be some opportunities for that. Now, once we get to midweek, this is where the energy starts to look a little bit different. We do have the moon going into Virgo for pretty much the whole rest of the week until late Sunday. Virgo is about taking some of that expressive Leo energy and making it more pragmatic. Virgo is all about taking care of what needs to be taken care of usually on a day-to-day basis. It's about improving things. It's about fixing things, taking care of day-to-day responsibilities, anything that is about refinement. And as I usually say with Virgo, refining the self is, I think, the best way of working with Virgo, the maiden, the perfected self, striving towards that perfected self, which makes it a great time for things like personal development, our work and service, and again, just improving ourselves or our environment in some way. So that's likely to be the backdrop, the theme there for the second half of the week. But the second half is also where we start to come up to these squares. And again, squares are collectively challenging, but very constructive times. They're times of action. They're times of implementation. They're times when things actually get done. They represent, for those of you that know, the angular houses in astrology, which deals with applying and implementation. They get things done. So things manifesting this second half of the week is very likely. And just all in all, a really good time to challenge ourselves. Again, with Uranus, how can we listen to that excitement? How can we listen to that part of ourselves that maybe wants to break free? Oftentimes with Uranus squares in particular, and maybe feeling this Thursday with the Mercury, we might feel a bit bottlenecked. Maybe there's some things out of left field. Maybe there's some unexpected. Maybe there's some things that we just have to roll with the punches. It's like just trying to adapt. And so that's what I think Uranus is helping us do during squares, is to be adaptive and be flexible, and to really get outside of our own comfort zones. Uranus is about challenging the status quo, but in this case, challenging our own status quo is usually great. So this can really come through our day-to-day life with the Mercury square on Thursday. This can also come through in our communication life with, communications or trade or correspondence, paperwork, things like this. So just a good time to listen to that excitement without throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, without too much of that impulsiveness or rashness that's just kind of in the air when Uranus is in squares like this. Again, doesn't mean we'll all be feeling that personally. For some of us, it might just be a little jittery, maybe a little bit of restlessness, whatever it might be, but applying it constructively. Listening to the true self, listening to that excitement, and actually applying it in our day-to-day lives, perhaps through conscious communication, maybe through conscious day-to-day activities there. All right, and this can be very constructive. Again, true self through the communication, true self changes, more excitement in our day-to-day life is really what we're aiming for here with these squares. Okay, so Moon will still be in Virgo here on Friday, improvement, refinement, Saturday, improvement, refinement. And by the way, going into this weekend, Mercury will be shifting into Aquarius while having that square. So there is this more innovative mind that we're having the second half of the week. More innovative communications. Yeah, this does happen every year, so it's nothing completely out of the blue, but a great time to think outside the box, a great time to communicate outside the box. Again, constructively with the squares that are going on, but an innovative mind, a forward-thinking mind, innovative communication. It's a really good time to think just in terms of the future for ourselves or collectively. Good time to think about contribution. Who are we uniquely, but also what is our unique role in the bigger picture of things, whether it's our network circles or the world at large. Just getting more innovative, getting more forward-thinking, with the mind and with our communications is a great way of working with that Mercury and Aquarius there. And once we do get to Saturday, Venus will start to shift into Aquarius as well. This involves more of our values and relationships. So probably Saturday, Sunday, starting to notice more of a valuing of that unorthodoxy, valuing of that challenging the status quo. Yeah, and perhaps connecting in that way in our relationships as well. So wanting to connect in more of a individualistic, freedom-oriented, and even unorthodox sort of way, just to mix things up. And again, it is just a great week to intentionally, mindfully, consciously mix things up, particularly with our own comfort zones, but intentionally nonetheless there. So Sunday does have Venus squaring Uranus. How can we, again, induce a little bit of change, both with our enjoyments and with our relationships, without being too rash or erratic with the situation? So bring a little bit more mindfulness to maybe how we're enjoying things, whether it's overabundance, underabundance, whether it's the relationships in terms of maybe rashness there or not enough action, and listening to that true self that really is trying to guide us through all of this, to have a little bit more change in how we normally do things. Take how you normally do something, see if you can challenge yourself to do it a little bit differently. And on Sunday, particularly with anything involving resources, enjoyments, and relationships. All right, and in this way, again, very constructive. By the end of the week, we should be feeling more of that excitement. It should be more constructive, more balanced, and more healthy as a result of these actions we can take. But all in all, I think it's going to be a week of change, a week of implementing that true self, week of applying a little more excitement into our life. And so any intentions around that is absolutely great. All right, everyone. So that's the week in a nutshell. And by the way, Sunday will be the third quarter moon. So that's going to be really action phase from the full moon stuff. So again, early in the week from last Sunday, full moon status check. Yeah, bigger picture, awareness, maybe making some pivots, applying those throughout the week. And then once we get to this week's weekend, really challenging ourselves to apply it, as the third quarter moon is really the manifesting time of the post full moon part of the cycle there. But that is the week in a nutshell. Uranus moving forward on Tuesday. Some shifts perhaps with that connection to our higher self, our true self, applying some of these things, but with intention, with consciousness, in constructive ways, with Mercury, with our communication and our really how we're thinking about things, but challenging ourselves there on Thursday, and then with our enjoyments and relationships on Sunday. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for the live stream. Actually, Anna Maria will be not going live this Sunday. She is not feeling well this week, but next week and pretty much every week for the most part after that, she goes live here on YouTube at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time of the Americas. Definitely stay tuned for that. It's a great way to connect with the community. So hope to see you there next Sunday, but have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.